Welcome to my channel, Sella Buzz. Have you ever wondered what really made Johnny Depp want to become one of the coolest actors ever? We always talk about his crazy characters, the ones that made him famous. Captain Jack Sparrow, Edward Scissorhands, Willy Wonka. But before all that, before he was famous, before Hollywood even knew who he was, there was a moment, a spark. And that spark came from something you probably wouldn't guess. It came from a Beatles movie. Yes, the Beatles. A simple movie that didn't just make him happy, it changed his whole life. It lit a fire that kept burning for many years. And the funny thing is, most people today don't even talk about this movie anymore. It isn't popular now. It's just a black and white Beatles movie that to many looks like old stuff from the past. But to Johnny Depp it was something else completely. It was freedom. It was being different. It was permission to be weird. And it was the push he needed to believe that he too could make something that would last forever. Stick with me here, because by the end of this story, you'll see Johnny Depp in a totally new way. Let's go back in time. Picture Johnny, not the world-famous star, not the Hollywood big shot, but just a young kid growing up in Kentucky. His life wasn't fancy. His family moved around a lot. There was never a feeling of staying in one place. Money was hard to get, and for most of his childhood, Johnny never really felt like he fit in anywhere. He wasn't the kind of kid who was popular at school. He wasn't the kind of kid who thought he knew everything. And maybe you know that feeling of being restless, of not fitting in, of wondering where you're supposed to be. That was Johnny's life. Now imagine being that kid and finding something that suddenly makes you feel understood. For Johnny, that moment happened when he watched the Beatles movie A Hard Day's Night. On the outside, it's a fun movie about four guys running around London, hiding from fans, making jokes, and playing music. For most people, it's just entertaining, but to Johnny, it was more than fun. It was everything he had been looking for. He didn't just see four musicians. He saw freedom in John Lennon's smart comments. He saw charm in Paul McCartney's smile. He saw quiet strength in George Harrison's cool way of acting. And he saw humor in Ringo Starr just being Ringo. Together, they weren't superheroes. They weren't untouchable. They were just regular guys who happened to pick up guitars, laugh at grown-ups who told them what to do, and somehow shake the whole world. And in that moment, something clicked inside Johnny. He thought, why not me? Why can't I do something like that? That thought planted a seed. A small one at first, but it grew quickly. And the funny part is it wasn't even about acting in the beginning. It was about music. After watching the Beatles, Johnny picked up a guitar. He practiced for hours, teaching himself how to play, putting every feeling he had into those strings. Music became his escape, his voice, his way of saying what he couldn't say with words. And if you've ever fallen in love with something that makes you feel alive, you know exactly what he felt. Of course, life didn't magically turn perfect. Johnny quit school. He joined small bands. He played in smoky bars where no one really listened. He had a hard time. He heard people tell him he'd never make it. He was too different, too weird. But you know what kept him going? That spark. That movie. That one night sitting in front of a TV watching four young men prove that anything was possible. It told him that being different wasn't just okay. It was the whole point. Now here's where it gets even more cool. When Johnny started acting, it wasn't planned. He didn't grow up dreaming of being a movie star. In fact, he only went to his first tryout because his friend Nicolas Cage told him to. But the thing is, Johnny carried that Beatles spirit with him into Hollywood. He remembered the rebellion, the humor, the honesty, and he thought, if I'm going to act, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to let Hollywood put me in a box. That's why his career looked so different from anyone else's. While other actors wanted leading man roles and perfect images, Johnny chose the misfits, the outsiders, the characters no one else wanted to play. Edward Scissorhands wasn't supposed to be a huge hit character. Captain Jack Sparrow wasn't supposed to be one of the greatest movie pirates of all time, but Johnny saw something in them. Something real. Something that sounded like the same kind of rebellious honesty he saw in that Beatles movie. And people loved it because it wasn't polished. It wasn't predictable. It was human. Here's something most people don't know. Johnny once said in an interview that A Hard Day's Night showed him that art doesn't have to be perfect. It can be playful. It can be messy. It can laugh at authority and still be powerful. That lesson shaped every choice he made. Think about it. So many of his roles are characters who don't fit in, who live outside the lines, who refuse to play by the rules. That's Beatles energy right there. And here's a detail that feels almost like magic. Many years later, Johnny didn't just love the Beatles from far away. He actually became friends with Paul McCartney. Can you imagine the man who inspired you as a kid? The face you saw on that black and white screen, becoming someone you work with as an adult. In 2012, Johnny even directed one of McCartney's music videos. Talk about a full circle moment. From sitting in a room watching A Hard Day's Night to standing behind the camera helping Paul create again. If that's not proof of how one small spark can shape a life, I don't know what is. And through it all, music never left him. Even when acting brought him fame, when Hollywood pressures felt heavy, Johnny always turned back to his guitar. It was his anchor, his reminder of where he started. Just like the Beatles, when the world got too loud, music brought him back to himself. That love never went away. So let's think about this for a second. Would Johnny Depp have become the same actor we know today if he never saw that Beatles movie? Would he still have chosen roles that made people scratch their heads at first, but ended up becoming famous? Or was fate always leading him there, waiting for that one spark to light up? That's the big question. When you really stop to think about it, the idea is amazing. We love to believe that great artists are born meant for greatness, that they would have definitely found their way to fame no matter what. But life doesn't usually work that way. Life is a mix of small moments, random sparks, and accidents that crash into natural talent and personality. For Johnny Depp, that Beatles movie, A Hard Day's Night, wasn't just entertainment. It was the right piece of inspiration at the right time. A spark that landed in a mind already full of curiosity, longing, and a sense of being different from everyone else around him. Without that spark, who knows if the Johnny Depp we know today would even exist in the same form. Think about Johnny as a kid. He wasn't born into Hollywood. He didn't grow up in some fancy California home with famous parents. He was just a boy from Kentucky, restless and often moving from place to place. His family had money problems, and the constant changes in his childhood left him feeling like he didn't quite belong anywhere. That sense of not fitting in is important. People who feel out of place often search harder for something to hold on to, something that tells them it's okay to be different. When Johnny saw the Beatles on screen, being playful, sarcastic, rebellious, and still loved for it, he finally saw an example of how not fitting in could actually be a strength. Now imagine if he had never seen that. Imagine if his world had stayed limited to the ordinary, to small-town ideas of what life should be. Get a job, settle down, don't stand out too much. Without that vision of artistic freedom, maybe he would have accepted that life. Maybe he would have stayed working random jobs, never daring to pick up his guitar with the same fire. Maybe he would have pushed away his weirdness instead of embracing it. And if that happened, then the Johnny Depp we know, the one who gave us Jack Sparrow's swagger or Edward Scissorhands' heartbreaking gentleness, might never have existed. Of course, there's another side to this. Some would argue that fate has a way of pulling us back to where we're supposed to be. Even if Johnny hadn't watched A Hard Day's Night, maybe another spark would have come. Maybe he would have heard a different band at the right time. Maybe he would have fallen in love with a book or seen another movie or met someone who lit that same fire in him. After all, Johnny already had that restless creative energy inside him. He already had the soul of someone searching for something bigger. Perhaps the Beatles film wasn't the only path. It was just the one that happened to come first. But there's something about first sparks that feel different. First sparks set the mood. They plant an idea so deeply that it becomes part of who you are. When Johnny saw John, Paul, George, and Ringo laughing their way through life, turning their weird parts into charm, it gave him permission to dream in a way he might not have otherwise. Sure, another spark might have come along, but it wouldn't have been the same. The Beatles carried a kind of rebellion mixed with joy that matched Johnny's energy perfectly. That exact combination shaped the way he thought about art. Not just music, but eventually acting too. And it's not just about career choices, it's about identity. Watching that film didn't just make Johnny want to be an artist. It made him believe it was possible to be himself while doing it. That's huge. How many actors in Hollywood try to fit a shape to look like the classic leading man, to play the safe roles that promise box office success? Johnny could have done that too. He was handsome enough, talented enough, and Hollywood certainly tried to push him in that direction early in his career. But he said no. He didn't want to be the next pretty face. He wanted to be the outsider, the one who took risks, the one who chose characters that made people raise their eyebrows and say, "Really? You're going to play that?" With that rebellious streak, that willingness to lean into the strange came straight from that early inspiration. Now let's think about this from another angle. What if Johnny had never gone into acting at all? Remember, his first love was music. After watching the Beatles, he picked up his guitar and put himself into it. For a while, he really believed he would make it as a musician. He quit school. He played in little bands. He performed in bars where no one cared who he was. If acting hadn't found him, if Nicolas Cage hadn't pushed him toward that first tryout, maybe Johnny would have stayed in music. And if that had happened, would the world even know his name today? Would he have been another struggling guitar player known only in small circles instead of a world-famous star? It's possible. And yet, even in that case, the Beatles movie is still at the root of it. Because without it, he might not have picked up that guitar at all. He might not have discovered the love of performing that later carried into his acting career. In that sense, A Hard Day's Night was the domino that tipped over everything else. Acting might have come later by chance, but the courage to chase any artistic path at all came from that spark. But let's not ignore another truth. Inspiration alone isn't enough. A lot of people watch movies and feel inspired. A lot of kids pick up guitars after watching their heroes. Not all of them become Johnny Depp. What made the difference? Never giving up, risk-taking, and an unusual ability to handle failure. Johnny kept going even when he was broke. Even when no one believed in him. Even when he felt lost. That's where fate and choice come together. The Beatles movie lit the fire, but Johnny had to keep feeding it. He had to risk rejection, risk being made fun of, and risk making a path that wasn't safe or guaranteed. That combination of inspiration plus stubbornness is rare, and that's why he stood out. So if we circle back to the question, would Johnny Depp have become the same actor without that movie? The honest answer might be no, not exactly. He might still have been creative. He might still have found success in some way. But the version of Johnny Depp we know, the risk-taker, the oddball, the rebel who gave us characters no one else could have pulled off, that version might not exist without A Hard Day's Night. The Beatles didn't just show him art. They showed him a way of being, and once he saw it, he never let it go. And maybe that's the bigger lesson for all of us. Sometimes the things that change our lives don't look big at first. They can be as simple as a movie, a song, or even a single line someone says to us at the right moment. Those sparks might feel small, but they shape everything. For Johnny Depp, it was a black and white Beatles film that gave him permission to be different. For you, it could be something else completely. The important thing is to notice when something lights that fire inside you and to keep chasing it, no matter how strange or risky it seems. Because in the end, maybe it isn't about fate or chance. Maybe it's about what you do with the spark once it arrives. Johnny's spark came from a Beatles movie. Yours might come from somewhere totally unexpected. But if you have the courage to follow it, who knows where it could lead? And it also makes you wonder about your own life, doesn't it? What if the thing that changes your path isn't something big and dramatic, but something small? A song, a movie, a moment you don't even realize is important until years later. That's the magic of sparks. They don't always look like much at the beginning, but if you follow them, they can light up your whole life. Now here's where I want to hear from you. Do you think Johnny Depp would have been the same without A Hard Day's Night? Or do you think something else would have eventually lit that fire? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I'm really curious. And if you love stories like this, you'll definitely want to check out my video on Johnny Depp's private world. There are details there you've probably never seen before. And trust me, it will surprise you if this story touched you. Give it a like, share it with a friend who loves Johnny Depp, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because just like Johnny, sometimes one small spark can change everything.